of mycologists. I think I met Daniel initially at a William Padilla Brown event, which was very exciting. He was talking about all of the things he was doing in Pennsylvania at the time. And and so, yeah, so I kind of met up with everyone there. And eventually the Mycological Society was formed, got more involved there. But Daniel's also going to be speaking today. So Danielle, you want to introduce yourself? And then we have Sydney will introduce herself as well.
Of course. Some reason it's not letting me share and talk.
Oh, weird.
But we'll get it going. Let's just go back.
I can have you, if it's taken away your audio, we can just skip your introduction. You can do it later. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, so we can just go ahead and share the screen again. And since it's not letting Daniel do audio, we'll go through my section, and then Daniel will do his presentation. So Sydney is going to be here too, and she'll introduce herself when we get to her. But I always like to just kind of share. A lot of people don't even, if you don't know what is in mushroom grow blocks, or like what our program is, like essentially commercial farms, they grow gourmet culinary mushrooms on sawdust, grains, and the grains or spawn, which includes the spores that are introduced for the specific species of mushroom that wants to be grown. And you can skip to the next slide, Daniel. And when those are used, or once after about 3 to 4 weeks, the block is colonized, and eventually a mushroom grows. And then after it grows, usually it is thrown in the waste, or in some cases it's composted. There's some mushroom farms that have compost programs. And so Daniel is going to share a little bit about the origins, but I'm going to do just like a brief kind of like talk about the big picture of like how much this waste there actually is globally. So typically about 5 million tons of spent mushroom substrate is disposed of globally. And one of the things that's different about the cultivation of mushrooms, even though it is very much a water-saving measure compared to other protein-based foods or like vegetables, it uses a lot less water, but it does create a lot more organic matter as a waste product. And so Daniel's going to talk a little bit more in detail about the origins of how this all started back in 2015. We can go to the next slide. But where I really came and got involved was there was some things happening out at the Myco Research Station at Circle Acres. And we have Eric with us tonight from Ecology Action, who is the land steward of Circle Acres. But at a certain point, there was a lot of waste being produced because there's a couple of big farms that opened up in Central Texas. And so things really didn't kick off until around Snowvid. You all probably can't forget. Who can forget? We're all traumatized still. Everyone lost electricity for like weeks, and including the mushroom farms. And one of the farms dropped off a load of blocks in my front yard. I was like, hey, let's just use my front yard. It's very accessible. I'm on a corner lot, and within hours, they were just completely gone. And so over the next, I guess that was like 5 years ago now, over the last, we can go to the next slide now. So over the last several years, we've have now about 50 community sites, community gardens, plant stands, schools, churches, people's houses. And there's around 300 to 500 volunteers annually that help us out with this program. And since we've started this, about 14,000 people have signed up to participate, either in like picking them up from a community spot or um, or picking them up from the farms. And so I think what we've kind of proved out is like there's definitely something beyond this final flush. There's definitely a use for this waste. And kind of my background in like gardening was kind of where I started using them, these sort of what we call like low tech methods where you're not using a lot of inputs. We can go to the next slide. And so just looking at our data from the last 12 months, the impact, and we track everything through a volunteer management software called GivePulse, which helps us track like how many people are involved, how much they're taking. But this is the environmental impact just in our region. So this amount of organic matter diverted equals this much metrics, a ton of carbon emitted, which is the equivalent to planting almost over 7,000 trees, keeping 35 cars off the road, which is avoiding 400,000 miles of gas annually. And then we'll look at the community impact next and the engagement. So since 2023, when we started tracking things through the GivePulse app, these are the volunteer hours and how many shifts and how many people have been involved. And there's a company that sort of keeps track of like what like volunteer impact is like dollar wise. And this is the total amount. So kudos to everyone in the community that has helped make this a possibility. And knowing like the difficulty of running small businesses in this current economic situation, like this stuff matters. And I think when Smallhold filed for bankruptcy, the Guardian article like essentially said they were doing everything right, like paying employees a living wage, composting everything, but the venture capitalists need their money, they need their return. And so it just sort of like validates things like this, like communities coming together. And I know it's like always controversial, like, but it's a for-profit business and like we're a nonprofit. Like those things matter, but it's also like we have to support one another in the things we love about our communities. And we can make those not only environmental impact, but economic impacts, social impacts. And so I'm going to hand it over now to Sydney, who's going to get more into like some of the science and the soil science, environmental science. Although, Daniel, did you want to jump in now or do you want to go after Sydney?
I'll just go after Sydney. We're on a
Okay.
roll.
Okay.
I was hoping I would go second. I'm sorry, I'm not a good public speaker. I'm really going to give it my
And your volume's really low. Is there any way you can turn up your volume?
Yes. Let me see. Actually, how's that?
That's great.
Okay. Thank you. My tech guy on standby for me. So my name is Sydney Gibson, and I am a student at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I'm a biology major, and tonight I'll be talking about a research study I did on spent mushroom substrate, and how it can regenerate tired soils and close waste loops. and I did this at an expo at my university, and like no one was interested at all. And then I posted on Reddit, and like a lot of people were interested in it. So that that was really cool. But my soil origin story. So where it all began about 10 years ago. I started college. I'm finishing now because I took a break in the middle, had some kids, but started college about a decade ago as a pre-med major, and then quickly realized I took social cues better from plants than I do people. So switched over into the plant side of things, in ecology and soil. And so I built my first vermicompost bin because I was getting into gardening. I got a Rubbermaid trash can, drilled some holes in it, went to Walmart and got like 3 little cups of red wigglers for fishing, and that's where it started. And I still have those worms to this day. I've carried them with me everywhere. So it started with vermicomposting, and just how much worms help the soil just by, doing what they do. Just they're the best. And so about a year ago, I got into looking into mushrooms for like mental health, and then I just wanted to grow them just for fun. And After that, I took an interest in fungi in general, and I noticed that the waste blocks afterward were still very alive. Even when I tossed them in the yard, they would, weeks later, my kids and I would go outside and there would be mushrooms growing, and it was like magic. So that was really fun experience to have with my kids too. Um, So that is where my love of soil started. Um, and so, why does it matter? So, this is just 4 reasons of very many reasons. So, soil degradation crisis, which is a really big one where I live in Arkansas, because the majority, I'm pretty sure it's our number one thing that we do is agriculture. So more than 50% of agricultural soils worldwide have experienced significant reductions in organic carbon content and microbial biodiversity. And if we have dead soil, we don't have food. And if we don't have food, we die. So um, that's how I see it, at least. um, Organic waste management issues. So commercial mushroom cultivation produces, like Angel said earlier, a lot of waste that is not being put to use, that could be put to use. It's a cost-effective remediation strategy. The utilization of SMS as a partial substitute for synthetic NPK fertilizers and peat-based soil amendments. And then also the circular economy model. I'm all for closing the loop and using, one man's trash as another man's treasure. And that is definitely how I see this. Um, oh, sorry. And so, yeah, those are a few of my reasons why I think it's very important and why it matters. So my main question with my research was, can spent oyster mushroom substrate measurably improve soil microbial activity, carbon cycling, and nitrogen availability within 15 days? I chose 15 days really just because it was a time crunch situation, but it actually ended up being like the perfect amount of time to get the research I needed. So, my methods. So, I used blue oyster spawn, and I used it on soy, wood, cottonseed pellets, and used the SMS after 2 flushes were harvested. So when I said partially spent, I never really know like what is considered partially spent, what is considered fully spent. I don't know. So I just put partially spent, but it was after 2 flushes. The control soil was garden topsoil. The other soil was an SMS mix of topsoil, 1-to-1 ratio, SMS and topsoil. And they were in 2 1-gallon containers, plastic containers, indoors in a consistent temp and moisture, just room temperature. And then I sprayed the insides of the plastic tub like every day, just on to keep it a little bit humid. And I measured daily the CO2, the pH, nitrate, and ammonia on days 1, 5, 9, and 13. And then just the texture, moisture, and the visible mycelium in the soil. And the goal there was to keep it simple. I didn't have that big of a budget. I kind of just used what I had. So this is definitely doable at home. Okay, so the CO2 activity results were very cool. I have something weird. 1 second. Where did it go? Okay. So I tracked the CO2 within the enclosed container, and the SMS spiked to 2,600 ppm by day 3, which indicates a microbial feeding frenzy. I had a midweek dip, which probably meant oxygen depletion or digestible carbon exhaustion. But then we had a second surge near day 15, which I was actually surprised. I thought that it was, had given up, but it actually rose on day 15. And it's that which suggests multiple phase decomposition. And then the controlled stayed lower, peaking at about 1,600 and then about 3,000 parts per million. The reason I think that is because in the topsoil there was like leaf litter, so that probably had something to do with it. My interpretation for that is that spent mushroom substrate induces rapid activation of soil microbial activity, characterized by an initial transient surge followed by a secondary sustained increase. And then for nitrogen cycling, so I was just going to do the CO2, but I had some aquarium equipment that I tested my aquarium water with. So I was like, I'm going to get the soil and just test the nitrate and ammonia and all that for fun. So the nitrate climbed linearly in SMS and it reached 3.5 ppm by day 13. The ammonia, it stayed below 0.5 ppm in both soils, which indicates nitrification rather than accumulation. So that's like the nitrogen cycle in action. The implication here is that SMS provides organic nitrogen along with beneficial microbes that rapidly convert it to plant available nitrate, eliminating the risk of ammonia burn. And then the pH, drifted from like neutral 7 to about 6.4, and the control held like 6.8 to 7. mid 6 pH unlocks phosphorus and micronutrients, makes them more available for the plant to take up, and organic acids from fungi break down, act as natural buffers. So spent mushroom substrate nudges alkaline soils toward the Goldilocks zone for nutrient uptake. And then the physical changes were very obvious. Visually, the soil was darker, it was more crumbly, it held moisture better. You could see the mycelium in the soil. And I had a cutting of a plant that like I just knew was dead. Like it was done, and I just stuck it in the soil for fun because I was done with the research at that point anyway, and it brought it back to life. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I think it just not only do my worms love it, but my plants love it just as much. So the implication for that would be modifications to soil structure, which enhances aeration, facilitates deeper root elongation. There's a lot more that I could go into on that, but those are the main ones that I noted. Let's see. So let's see. So I just want to add like just 4 quick takeaways from all that research. One is the CO2 bursts that equals microbial bloom. 2, steady nitrate rise equals improved nitrogen cycling. 3, stable plant-friendly pH buffer. And 4, enhanced soil structure. And that is what one waste block did in 2 weeks. So the future impact and scaling. If scaled, so what I wrote here, regenerative input, remediation, carbon sequestration, and local circular systems. So a lot of this got a little wordy, but scaled up, spent mushroom substrate could replace a slice of synthetic fertilizer. It could sequester carbon, drive community remediation projects, just like y'all do with the SMS blocks. And I'm also really interested. I mean, there's so much more I want to research as far as SMS goes, but last year my house burned down, and so I was looking into I forgot what his name is, but he's like looking into how fungi can help with forest fires and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in that. And so that's my main thing that I want to research next, that and how different types of spent mushroom substrate, specifically like pink oysters versus blue oysters, how that would change the data that I would get. But as of now, I'm not doing any research just yet, but hopefully soon.
Great. Excellent. So thanks so much for sharing your research. It's always exciting to see people digging into this. So while Daniel gets ready to present, we can do another giveaway. So I did another random name selection, and I chose Steve's name, and I thought we would do like another Grow Kit plus a Myco Research Station t-shirt. Yeah, so is that Steve Smith? So I think you have my email if it is. I just have Steve, but I'll message you to email me. So yeah, so we're gonna just switch gears now, and Danielle's gonna present.
I'm going to try something real quick. 1 second.
Okay.
And for everybody that's on, thanks for, being part of this. I know it's a lot of information coming at you. We'll start amping it up. And thank you so much for Sydney. We're going to have some questions to follow up that presentation. We're also going to include a very interesting perspective from Sean from Hi-Fi, who's been behind the scenes, producing the blocks. And so there's a lot of stuff that's coming up. So thank you all for sticking around and being part of this. Give us 1 second.
Right. Does anybody have any questions for Sydney while we're waiting? Feel free to put it in the chat or come unmute.
So many questions. I can't wait to rewatch this.
Oh, great.
Thank you for your good work.
Yes. Okay, so Daniel's joining us again, having just a little bit of technical difficulty.
So what I meant about fewer invertebrates is there are certain types of like nematodes here in agriculture that we don't like to have, and that was what I was talking about specifically with that.
Cool. Is the screen being shared?
Yep, we can see you, we can hear you.
Awesome. All I needed to do was just switch browsers. Amazing. This is cool. I'm really glad to be doing this, and I'm really glad to be talking to a fresh set of faces and just a whole new generation of people getting interested in mycology. And I was just asking Sean before the talk started when Hi-Fi started, and it sounds crazy to think about 2017. It sounds crazy to think about 2015. And honestly, when I got into mycology, it was 2013. So I'm just like, wow, this is insane. How much everything's grown. But if I could put it into like one simple takeaway, is that yes, of course, fungi are great remediators. They're the great decomposers. They do all of these wonderful things that Sydney just alluded to. Of course, the enzymatic activity is just like, beyond anything else that I've studied or even tried to comprehend, which I still don't. I'll talk about it, but honestly, it's so complex. But they don't just do that. Imagine all of that stuff that's really cool. They don't just do that. They actually build, they connect, and ultimately they transform. Right. So as we'll move from this talk, into the panel, and I, again, want to hear from Sean about, his experience producing thousands and thousands and thousands of blocks every month. It's just like, seeing this transformation of just like dry sawdust, and then a few weeks later you have fresh produce, and then now you're seeing chefs cook with it. You're seeing people take it home, cook, like make lovely meals to, for their families. It's amazing the way that they can help us connect and transform, right? So we can transform matter, we can transform, people's lives. My life has definitely been, transformed because of mycology. And I hope that everybody that's ever come to a class, not just from me, but also, everybody that's been teaching at CTMS and offering this information, which is kind of like just floating out there, right? This isn't my information, your information. This is fungi speaking to us to some degree. It's just amazing to see how everybody has taken something away from fungi and applied mycology over the past few years. But really, it comes down to 5 lessons, and I want to present them now and then kind of like, just detail them a little bit. And I'll definitely tap into the history of the blocks. But, there's something to be said about crisis. And as we talk about enzymatic activity and fungi decomposition and all that, like catalysm or catalysis and catalysts are key, and so when we look at crisis, any sort of crisis, economic, social, ecological crisis, we can also use it as an opportunity for innovation, and it certainly has been the case for me. As I just alluded to, this like waste, becoming a resource, and Sydney has, shown us how in a very specific technical way, this particular waste can help us even restore degraded soils, right? And as we'll see, and through the numbers that Angel has shared with us, local actions, these things that we don't think matter that much, we're just picking up blocks or giving blocks away, or even just like talking about the fact that these farms have dozens, even hundreds of these blocks available for pickup. They send global ripples, right? And these can create massive movements, and we're seeing it happen. Collaboration, I think collaboration isn't optional. I think it's not just essential; it's a requisite. And I think everybody getting into mycology needs to learn how to share, needs to learn how to bridge certain disciplines. And then ultimately, when we think about scaling up, again, Sydney brought this up, but like as we think about scaling and thinking big, I think it requires a certain amount of deep rooting, keep us a foundation that keeps us strong and unshakable. So I'm going to get into each one of these, but I just kind of want you to keep these in the back of your head as we move through this. So I'll share a little bit about my background in applied mycology, and then we'll get into some of the fun questions that I've prepared for Sydney, Sean, and then some of the questions that y'all have. So it'll be exciting. So I found myself, diving deep into mycology in the Amazon rainforest back in 2014, and it's really it was really eye-opening, right? And I think that the main takeaway, without getting into too much of the details, that there are certain moments of disruption, whether these are ecological, social, economic, that force us to question all of the assumptions that we have and try new approaches that would otherwise remain ideas on a shelf. And I think in science and ultimately in applied mycology, many of the breakthroughs, at least many of the breakthroughs that I've seen, have emerged from urgent needs, like being in a situation that required, solving, managing waste streams, right? You found yourself in an agricultural project or permaculture, whatever, you start realizing you're producing a certain amount of waste. And so there's this emergence that comes from that, or whether it be restoring degraded soils or, cleaning up oil spills, et cetera. Like it's this pressure under time that rather than, once you live in it for a long time or experience it for a while, you start to learn and start seeing these crises as fertile ground for creativity, because you have no other choice. You have to get through it. So these challenges create openings for innovation. And if we approach them with curiosity and adaptability, something really cool can come from it, right? So as I found myself going through the jungles and seeing the devastation, I also noticed, how people were living their lives and how, these, from the outside looking in, this area seemed like an ecological disaster. Why would anybody live here? And then, you get reminded that people have been here for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And so it's just this shock, that immediately happens. And yeah, it's a situation where you have to decide whether you collapse and sink to the ground and fear everything that is happening, or you turn it into something positive that hopefully ends up changing people's lives. And so we set up shop back in 2015 at the Circle Acres Nature Preserve site. This is a 10-acre brownfield site. It used to be a landfill, and then it got capped, and then it got converted into an educational center, right? You can see the early stages of these blocks being transported from the mushroom farms, being used as educational materials. You see everybody digging in, feeling it. I would tell people to smell it, taste it, taste the myceliated substrate. It became this situation where the waste from these farms, ended up serving so many of the needs of this site, not just in the educational aspect, the volunteer programming that we see now, but it also helped us, kind of like how we have these moments of sporulation and spore dispersal. We started tapping into the urban centers, and we started going to bars, and we started going to like random spots where, even open mics and stuff. And it was just like, where else can we talk about this stuff? And then suddenly it wasn't just Texas, it was, Mexico, it was everywhere. And the same message was like, how do we get the point across that this is waste, from a farm? And not just that, but it's transforming other waste streams, agricultural waste streams. And it's all like being handled by the fungi, or being stewarded by the fungi. And so it's all about like being able to tap into this interconnectivity. And so with that being said, fungi remind us that, as Sydney said, nothing in nature is truly waste. There is no waste in nature. What one process sheds becomes the raw material for another and another, whether it's in a forest floor, a mushroom farm. And so the mycelium block exchange program is proof of that. Discarded spawn blocks can become a foundation for education, experimentation, regeneration. And so as we reimagine waste as resource, we start to unlock new cycles of value and ecological possibility. And it's all about process of creativity and observing, right? This is all occurring in front of us. These are nature's patterns. And so if we just learn to tap into that, we start to see a lot of stuff that, maybe we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And so I'm fascinated again, by the fungal enzymatic process, how they're able to unlock, some of nature's toughest barriers. And that allows organic material to decompose, be recycled, be used up again, be again, colonized by other fungi, and continue the process on and on. And so as we look and we observe fungi do these things in nature, we can bring it back to the lab. And it's mostly, what I've been focusing on. It's all about, repeating these patterns. And if everybody here, I'm sure, is familiar with biomimicry and trying to mimic that within a controlled setting so that we can, conduct research the way that Sydney has, or, run a successful commercial farm like Sean has. And it's all about being able to replicate what is happening out there, and then doing, our best job to honor that. And then start looking in uncommon places and start tapping into some of these like low-hanging fruit. We often think about applied mycology or even mycoremediation as like this, having this grand potential to clean up our planet, or, clean up landfills, or do this and do that. And certainly it has its place there, but it's also in your backyard. If you frequent a bar or restaurant or a friend's house and you notice cigarette butts or cardboard waste or things like that, start to unlock that fungal vision, because there's a lot of waste around us. And, this waste holds, they hold valuable resources that, in society, these are often overlooked. These are truly opportunities for transformation. And, there's many projects out there. There's one in France and elsewhere where they're turning cigarette butts into ashtrays. Think about the circularity there of just like turning one, business's waste into another business's opportunity. And it just creates this loop, and it's never ending. And to this day, I've never, I'm still looking for an end because it's never ending. And so there's so much we can do. You know, mycomaterials is an emergent industry. We can turn it into any sort of styrofoam replacement, coolers, you know, panels, anything. And again, this can all come from an established lab, an established farm, but you know, low-hanging fruit is starting with the mushroom blocks, where you can just break them up, add a little bit of substrate, or even if you don't have access to substrate, break up the blocks, turn, you know, put them into a mold, and then you can go from there. And then learn how to grow, learn how to capture, you know, the fungal genetics. And again, you know, you start taking some of these, you know, low tech, no tech, super DIY classes, and you realize it's not that complicated to preserve certain traits, you know, that you've observed. You know, I've found this Ganoderma, this reishi mushroom growing literally from concrete. It was just breaking through. It had a big chunk of concrete attached to it. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly something I want to get. And so you start getting into this habit of, you know, picking, you know, bioprospecting and picking certain traits for resilience, adaptation, productivity, right? If you want to start a commercial mushroom farm, start looking for fruits that, or, you know, strains that produce large fruit bodies, you know, and the lowest amount of substrate available. And then so you start getting into this really cool, mind space where you're observing everywhere around you. No matter where you go, you start seeing this stuff occur. And it's not unique to one, you know, geographic place. It's everywhere I've ever been. I've found, you know, turkey tail growing, you know, in a busy like Mexico City sidewalk with like, you know, all the air, you know, contamination, smog from buzzes and everything. And the, you know, the Trametes or the turkey tail's thriving. And so you can start to tap into that everywhere you go. And so again, you know, these local actions, you know, a community lab project, a small farm experiment, something, you know, in between. It could be a neighborhood compost system. All of these modest, you know, seemingly insignificant things can really send this ripple effect all across, you know, especially now how interconnected we are. But it's all about, you know, being able to share that knowledge and practices. You know, these could end up shaping policy. These could inspire future researches or sparking similar efforts across borders. You know, I found myself, you know, spending some time in Europe and Poland. You know, so many people from Ukraine fleeting. Some of them have PhDs, like know way more than I will ever know about fungi, and they're, you know, setting up shop in a neighboring country, escaping, you know, war and devastation, and still tapping into this fungal network. You know, so you know, these networks themselves embody this principle of connecting these local nodes into these vast systems. And to this day, I'm still connected to that community over there. So it's really cool how these grounded local initiatives can really be the catalyst for wider systemic change. And, you know, you don't need no politician to tell you how to spread your spawn on your lawn. You know, this is really cool, you know, to see people come and go. You know, during the pandemic, you know, mushroom farm, smallhold came, you know, hi-fi was still thriving and still thriving to this day. And it's just cool to see how, you know, everything has like this balance and you know, coming in and out. But, you know, what remains consistent is this ability to connect, you know, through fungi. And obviously, you know, extending the mycelial mileage on these blocks is essential. You know, they're still full of life, and we can extend them. You know, we can continue to produce flushes, you know, 8 times over, 10 times over. I've seen crazy things happen. Obviously, you can do a lot, you know, through volunteer exchange programs or, you know, projects, restoration projects. This is out at Circle Acres. You know, if you're ever interested about work at Circle Acres, definitely reach out to Eric. Some of the work that he's done out there, not just with fungi, but with worms and compost, and obviously native plants and native trees is amazing, and something that, you know, that site itself can reflect so much of what I'm trying to convey, which is this interconnectivity. And then they're so beautiful, you know, and I've had so many photographer friends capture this emergence, you know, this beautiful moment of reproduction. At the end of the day, fungi, these mushrooms are the reproductive organ or the reproductive body of the fungus. And so it's really cool to capture that and then to share that, and, just to see smiling faces and, people being inspired by this is amazing. And again, collaboration, all of this stuff. I think any effective and successful project, create bridges, between expertise, resources, cultures. They link farmers, they link scientists, they link artists, they link communities. I think isolation limits growth. And in some cases, when we're doing research, isolation is cool. You get to control certain variables so that you can see what's happening. But at the end of the day, collaboration really multiplies everything that we're trying to do. So just as fungi thrive in networks, so must we. That's a weird phrasing. I like this picture a lot with the supernatural pest control system that we developed at Circle Acres. So without getting too deep into it, one of the cool discoveries, across, in my time is that, a lot of the times we try to isolate things, and it's like these rare, bizarre moments where like a mold, growing in a wall suddenly finds its way into a test jar. And after time and time again of trying to get rid of this mold, we just decided to test it. And so this mold became a top hitter. Like it just became this top candidate in one of the experiments we were working on, degrading plastics. And it was just like, how, we literally burnt the wall. We tried bleaching it. We tried doing so much to get rid of this mold, but it kept popping up into our experiments. And after all that, we just said, what the hell, we'll just actually culture it and see what it does. And it just like became this awesome strain that, I've kept alive, and it's just been kicking ass ever since. So it's always like these moments where we're constantly fighting, and it's just about letting go and learning to integrate it. Obviously, if you're running a mushroom, commercial mushroom farm, you may not want to do this, but there's always opportunities for receiving the gift of trichoderma and other contaminants. And then lastly, we look at, scaling up, and, I think the big question for me and for everybody that's tapped into mycology is like, cool, if this works so well, why isn't everybody doing it? Or why haven't we done it? And, why isn't this so standardized? And I think, these are ambitious visions. Being ambitious in that fungi can, radicalize or transform industries like the oil and gas industry, tapping into that. These things don't happen overnight. So there's a reason why mycoremediation hasn't become that wide scale. But having these ambitious visions, whether for sustainable food systems, through mushroom farming, bioremediation, circular economies, these visions can only endure if they're grounded in deep relationships, right? With place, with communities, with ecosystems. And so as you're looking to get your startup off the ground and you're rushing to scale because that's the big, the big mission when you're doing all this, if you don't have an anchor and if you don't have something rooting you, it's going to be very, very, very easy to get sidetracked or toppled over, or simply just lose sight of what you're trying to do or what you were trying to do in the beginning. So lasting transformation really comes from building strong foundations before we reach upward. And as I find myself being down here in the Yucatán Peninsula of Mexico, I find myself, merging two worlds that have been, a big part of me for the past 20 years, including the time that I was at the university and working as a hydrogeologist, and being able to tap those two worlds, both mycology and hydrogeology, looking at large geological processes over millennia, and then these super, acute processes, that, take few days. Sometimes I've seen changes within hours, of the fungal world, and then how, sporadic they are. And when they pop up, they're gone. Like these two worlds merging into this one project that I've got going on now. It's just crazy, to think about these two worlds colliding. But at the end of the day, it's about having this long-term impact. It's not just about these ideas that we all have and that we're sharing and that are going around, and the hype, but it's about, building strong foundations, and ultimately at CTMS, the whole idea here was to have a place where anybody, it doesn't matter what background you're in, what place you're from, what religion, whatever, it doesn't matter. What ties us, what keeps us together is the fascination for fungi. And so, and being able to, stay resilient, despite everything that's going on. And the cool thing is that the science behind fungi, mycology at the end of the day mirrors this long-term strategy. There's a reason why fungi have been here for millions of years, if not more, and we're still trying to get the hang of living on this planet. And so it's, rest assured that we're using a system that has worked. And it's a strategy that we need for these big environmental solutions. So it's really cool to see everything, come around, and I'm going to leave it there. But I just want to say thanks to everybody and really seeing this transformation from MycoAlliance starting in 2015, the emergence of the mushroom farming world in Austin, how resilient the community has been, Hi-Fi being able to stick around and go through many challenges, but still being able to provide super high quality products and just, the blocks that we all need. It's really cool to see all this. So we'll leave it there. And I think we can move on to some questions.
Yes. So there were a few in the chat from, we can start there. And then I know, Daniel, you had some for Sydney too. But Kevin, do you want to come on mute and ask your question? And just so you all know, Kevin is one of the superstar volunteers. He's picked up thousands and thousands of blocks and has been doing an amazing restoration project in West Austin in the Edwards Plateau, growing a bunch of natives. He has a bunch of maples. I was able to get a tour. It was like a secret project of his. He wasn't telling me about it. And that's one of the things I also love about people's use of the mycelium. Like sometimes it's like a secret connection, this hidden kingdom. People use the spent mushroom substrate. They get their hands on it. They're not sure what's going to happen. And then it just starts to happen. So Kevin, maybe you can say a few words about that and ask your question for Sydney as well. See if
thank you so much. And honestly, the folks that have already spoken, and a special shout out to Sean Henry at Hi-Fi Myco. I mean, y'all do such an amazing job. So thank you, Angel.
Yeah.
I have this piece of property that is in a part of town where we have canyons, and most folks don't do anything with the canyons. And for 25 years, I've developed the canyon, And when I had a job, I couldn't spend as much time as I wanted to. And now that I have more time, the first thing I did, I said, how do you build up the soil like Sydney did? What do you do to get better soil? Because basically we don't have soil where I live. It's just limestone caliche, yeah. So I found y'all. I found the mushroom block giveaway, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that's like gold. And so I did my first journey into that, and I haven't looked back. And the fun part of it is it's just very early, and I'm just hoping and praying that everything you guys are saying is going to work in the balcones fault, because it's a tough environment out there. But I've already seen, and I think Angel, I showed you some of the results, that it looks like the soil is really happy. The insects are happy. And I have one tree, an old Montezuma cypress. Looks like it had been a bonsai Montezuma cypress, right? A long time. And it has put out so much growth in the last, say, 7 months. And right underneath it, where its roots lie, is one of my favorite little batches of mushroom substrate, chips, coffee grinds, all the things. So I would say, I think, and I would second Daniel, like we are so beholden to the farms that produce the material that let us do this. Yeah, it might be waste in somebody's mind, but it's absolute gold in other people's mind. The other thing, the last point I wanted to confirm is when you're dropping off blocks and you have somebody come up and they're a little shy or a little tentative and they're like, oh, are these available, etc. And you get to interact with that. That's where the volunteer component really makes you shine. Or when you leave blocks at a school and you see the kids with the beautiful product of a third or fourth flush, you're like, okay, this is good stuff. So thank you very much, Angel, and thank you to the whole group, and great job, speakers.
Yes. Yeah. Did you have a question about the mix of compost kind of in Sydney's process, or?
I did. If Sydney doesn't mind sharing, I mean, she gave me a nice private answer. Basically,
Okay.
one of the issues is like, why do you use something and not another thing? So I asked why the topsoil, and she indicated it's the most readily available, which is fine. I also like the idea that we all have topsoil. So what happens when you add something to the topsoil? So, but I would let Sydney speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. So I guess we can move on to Daniel. Did you want to ask Sydney some of the questions you have for her, or?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, if she wants to hop on this particular answer and talk a little bit more about that. Otherwise, I'm really curious to know her thoughts on something she already mentioned, which is comparing different, substrate composition, mushroom species. Like, what are you expecting to find, and have you worked out any sort of like, hypotheses or anything that you want to kind of give us a preview of. I've heard a lot of stuff, and so it'd be nice to see what Sydney's got going on in terms of moving forward. See?
Oh, it looks like she jumped off and is joining again. I think that might be her. There's some connectivity issues. So maybe we can ask a question of Eric or Sean while she's getting set up again.
Yeah, I gotta bounce at 8:30. Just FYI.
Let's just take advantage of that, Sean. You want to introduce yourself a little bit, and then I'll ask you a couple questions about the block program.
Yeah. I'm Sean Henry. I run Hi-Fi Mycology. It's the farm in Austin, Texas. We've been growing since 2017, which sounds crazy. Man, I have my personal, I get the blocks from us, but my experience with them initially was I realized how valuable they were because I put them in my front yard garden, and I sense, first of all, the mutant worms that develop from within is absolutely insane. So something's going on there, and so I couldn't give it as much attention as I wanted, and now it's like a jungle. It's just the most fertile place ever, and it is because we're an urban farm. We have to put them in the dumpster, and that is the worst. And now we don't put any of them in the dumpster. We've been able to basically we have to have it there for like our lease reasons, but it's the most amazing relationship with y'all because people come, they're enthusiastic, it's not trashed. It's really cool to be able to spread this out to the community because we get so wrapped up in kind of the day to day, and we don't really get to connect. And it's like one of the better moments of the days because, there's this like value exchange, and that it's going to do something to folks' gardens. So yeah, we grow a lot of awesome mushrooms. I really want to see where mycology goes. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe talk a little bit more about that. Like you've seen it from the start. You saw us come by, load up a Honda CRV with blocks, like, and now this has created a massive impact. And so like that just kind of seeing that grow and seeing fresh faces come and go. But like talk on that, and then also your background, not just mushroom farming. You've done all kinds of farming. So like, what do you see as like the biggest opportunities in waste streams as community resources, right? Like, obviously the block exchange program is a big one for now, but like, what other aspects or components have you seen in all of your farming experience? Reconsidering this idea of a waste stream.
I love the idea of everything being circular, and so I haven't seen it, but I believe that it could come back with different strains of compost loving mushrooms, and so it would be awesome to get some agricultural waste products from farms, because like oyster mushrooms will grow on anything. So corn stalks or hemp stalks, or and then even like the compost from a farm after they harvest all of their fruit or their tomatoes, let's say. I'd love to eventually see that kind of then turn into compost that you can grow mushrooms on, and then donate that back as well. So there'd be like a double donation cycle, like a returning of that sort of thing, because I I love that we grow these mushrooms, but they come from trees. I don't see it as a long-term, like, viable option. Um, and so exploring, we have to explore recycling these materials to maintain mushroom cultivation. And so it would be really neat to be able to kind of divert a portion of our inputs to something that's already been used, and like have it kind of cycle back around in the future. And so that's something that's on my back burner right now as we grow the business, is to be able to kind of incorporate other different kinds of mushrooms so that we can facilitate that.
Yeah, in Texas, hemp processors, they're in Taylor. I know that they started selling their sort of herds at Callahan's. So I definitely want to do some like backyard kind of low tech experimentation with that.
Yeah, I'm on a quest to go more low tech. Like high tech stuff is, I want to incorporate, have a nice mix of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had a question for Sean about that, exactly that. And just curious how much or what kind of research you've done in growing, because, circular, unless we're growing trees, unless we're growing forests, all that sawdust has got to come from somewhere. As I'm curious, like what you guys have tried or attempted, like at Hi-Fi, in terms of finding some more like local or regional, substrate options.
So I've only done personal experiments with my own garden refuse, and I've been able to grow King Stropharia poorly, and Agaricus blazei, which is like the almond agaricus mushroom. And so it's just mainly a time thing, to where I'd need to be able to devote more research or more of our like resources to experiment with that, because product development is something that's always on the back burner for us, mainly because we're just in an urban place. So if you've been there, it's like a concrete playground. So we don't have a whole lot of like room to work with that. But I think that that's the way to go, is to find a compost loving mushroom that isn't, you can't compete with the button mushrooms, but the blazei is an agaricus. It does grow pretty well. It's also medicinal, and so I kind of went ahead in that direction. And then there's some other species I want to experiment with, but just kind of linking up with. I'm interested in these hemp stalks, but also just compost material from, maybe if we ever you know, if a farm is coming to pick up blocks one day when we have a new facility, maybe they can drop off some of their waste, because we can easily turn that into compost.
Yeah.
So there's a few questions in the chat related to just the volunteer process. So Danielle, can you share the Canva again? Because I put together a slide on the steps. So maybe we can go through kind of the volunteer process, how it works. But I mentioned we use an app called GivePulse that just is kind of an appointment setting software, basically, where you sign up for a shift and it has like reminders and you can add it to your calendar, all those good things. We'll just start. So we have a program that we started last year where you can get blocks delivered to a community-based project. So if this is something that is interesting to you, you need to be within about 30 miles of the mushroom farm. So you can sign up and because we always need more places, more community gardens for them to go. And this is the ideal. So we've been taking them to a lot of schools lately, a lot of community gardens where everyone's getting ready for fall planting. We can go to the next slide. So I think we'll go back. I think there's 2 slides before. Here we go. Yeah. So these are the 3 mushroom farms that you can pick up blocks. So at Hi-Fi, you need to make an appointment. And Fallen Oak, they now have their own form on their website. We used to send people to them, but they're changing things up. I'm not exactly sure what they have going on right now as far as how they're dealing with compost, but kind of it all came to a head this week when after multiple people went to get blocks and they didn't find any. And there's like some safety issues and stuff of like climbing in, big dumpsters, and we just want to avoid all of that. But Cap City Shrooms, they're in South Austin, and they put their blocks out every Wednesday. It's a much smaller amount. But if you go to our website from this QR code, centraltexasmycology.org/volunteer, you can sign up at Hi-Fi. There's a link to sign up. So when you go to Hi-Fi, here's just kind of the 3 steps of how it works. So you schedule your time. Pickup is on 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So you then pick them up, and then we recommend that if you're coming with a vehicle, use a tarp or something like that, because they can be a little messy. So if you don't have a truck and you have like a SUV or something along those lines, like bring a tarp for sure. And then our program is all about sharing and symbiosis. So you keep half for your own projects, for your own restoration or gardening projects, and then the rest of them go to a community spot. And that's where I come in as the coordinator of the program. I've kind of got my ear to the soil per se. I know exactly where they need to go. So you can sign up there, and we're always loving to hear how people are using them. So share your stories with us. We have a new form on our website where you can share those with us. Share your photos. You can tag us on social media. We'll go to a few more questions, and then we have an announcement, because this whole program was sort of started, and the donations that we've taken for the program has been to kind of seed people's curiosity in mycology. So a lot of people get interested picking up the blocks. It's sort of this gateway. But we want to give people the opportunity to do more. So learn these sort of STEM activities, do things in a more sterile environment, and learn some of the things that are happening at the mushroom farms and beyond. And so we created a new program that we just announced called Spore Core. And initially we're going to be teaching, the methods of growing mushrooms in a sterile environment. But we want to continue to build out our native spawn library, build out our cultures of genetics for things that are used for remediation, and some of the things that both Daniel is talking about, and Art, he's doing some things over at the Balcones Canyonland. But I'm going to kind of hand it over to Eslise, where she's going to walk through the three, and we're starting online. We're starting this series of classes online, and eventually we're building out kind of a small lab space that we're hoping that we'll outgrow, but it'll be a lab space where we'll have flow hoods and all the things. So we want to make things accessible to people where they don't have to buy a bunch of equipment. They'll have access to this expensive equipment and just get their hands not dirty, keep their hands clean in this space. But so I'm going to hand it over to Esley. So we'll be kicking things off initially with the in-person workshop where this community lab will be here in Central Austin, with a workshop on Sunday, the 28th of September. And we'll be learning, we'll be making a DIY laminar flow hood. This will be led by Mike from Armadillo Myco Supply, and this will be the flow hood that we'll be using in this lab space. And the next day will be our kickoff to this 3-part series.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Esley. So Spore Corpse is designed to give you the practical skills to grow mushrooms indoors and at home. Even if you've never tried it before, over the course of 3 missions, you'll build out your toolkit steps slowly but surely. So for example, mission 1 is building a home lab on a budget. We'll show you what tools actually matter, how to set up clean air and temperature control without spending a fortune, and you'll leave with a real checklist and starting in order to start your own lab. Then mission 2 is inoculation, spore work, and cloning. So you'll learn sterile culture techniques, how to work with spores and cultures, and how to clone your own mushrooms on agar, and expand your own grows with confidence. Then mission 3, we go into fruiting, incubation, and harvesting. We cover substrates, timing, fruiting chambers, troubleshooting, and of course, how to harvest and store your mushrooms. By the end, you'll walk away with a full toolkit, digital resources, and the confidence to keep on growing on your own. Plus, you get to be plugged into our Spore Corps alumni network, which I think is going to be super fun, where you can share progress, ask questions, and celebrate wins with other growers. So whether you're here for food security or sustainability or just the joy of trying something new, Spore Corps is here to get you started growing. But yeah, I am super, super excited. I think people are going to learn a lot of skills. I think that we've done our very best to make it as versatile and easy to understand as possible. And it's super fun, sci-fi, futuristic, and I'm super, super excited for it to all get started. It's going to be really fun. I've been having a lot of fun setting it up, and so I'm pretty sure we're all going to have fun learning together as well.
Yes, Esley, thank you. We're very excited about that. And you can learn more about the classes on the website, and you can always email us if you're not sure. But really, like, the people that I have to thank is all the people that have volunteered, donated over the last, 4 years. It's helping us fund, kickstart this program, and it's all grassroots and from what could be waste, but it's not.
Yeah.
Just going towards supporting more education and getting more people connected with the fungi kingdom.
I think there's a few more questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to go over that and take advantage of the fact that we've got Sean for 10 more minutes.
Yeah, Sean, would love to hear more. And, we're very excited too to have guests. There's like the idea of having guest teachers in the future to teach fun lessons. We'd love to have you join us as well in the
Yeah, I want to.
in the lab once we get it all up and going.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
We have something about Tiara in growing the Myco community. Where did you see the uptick that brought the organization where it is today? What do we think the future of growth looks like? And I think it's, well, at least from my perspective, it's this, right? Having Sean here, having, educators, having other folks, researchers, right? Like, we could go down the list of the 30 plus participants in this call, and we'll each have something unique to offer. And I think that at least for me, what set it off is like, you're talking about wanting to do this and you're talking about doing that. And it's basically the same thing. If we just get y'all in the same room, and sharing, I think that would be beneficial. And I think that, for Sean, I think, a question that I've always had, and it's something that I've taught a lot of people how to grow mushrooms, kind of like how we talked about, from cloning to substrate prep and inoculation. And then the ultimate goal is to have a productive grow chamber or fruiting room or, farm. But like, how do you balance that, not just the economics, because, we have to be super upfront, it's break the taboos of talking about this, but like, how do you balance the economics of running a successful farm and then still being, generous enough to contribute to a program like this, right? When there's so many different ways that you could, take advantage of us in that sense. But like, just like, how do you balance all of this stuff and instill your fascination with all things research and fungi?
Let's see. It's tough. But I mean, I'm just one of the people at Hi-Fi. And so, I had a lettuce farm that for 8 years, a hydroponic lettuce farm out in Manor, Texas. And that was a horrible, wonderful learning experience where I had investors, and that basically like salted my relationship with like that form of capitalism. And 2 of my current employees came from that business because when I left, it was just terrible. So like there's balance in how we interact with the community, but also how we treat our people. And so it's really, all of that is so important. So it doesn't, like, we're a for-profit business and profit does matter, but our structure is, even though it's like technically a pyramid, it's more like a trapezoid, a very, very short trapezoid, because there's very little stratification between myself and like the lowest paid person at Hi-Fi. And so, I mean, I guess we could find somebody to try and like the spent substrate blocks, they literally are gold. I think they're super valuable. We probably could find someone and dedicate them to turning it into another revenue stream, and it might take a decent amount of stress off of me because we got a little more money from that. But man, I don't know. I'm also a gardener and a farmer, and it feels good to feel good about certain things. So like, it's more like the logistics of the balance is difficult, but finding it isn't very difficult because you get involved with organizations like this and you see people like my mushroom blocks in my garden in the middle of the summer have fruited like 12 times. And just a little PSA, it's about to be winter. And so if you get the blocks, all the varieties are going to fruit in your yard. So you'll be able to get tons of different kinds of mushrooms throughout the winter, and they do all these crazy different things, like different shapes of mushrooms, different ways you can kind of cook them. So I don't know that, like, I love being connected to the community because it's really, really difficult to foster that when you're just in the business mindset of trying to, like, because this 90% of my time is just like dealt with the logistics of like getting shit to from one place to another and all that type of stuff. It can be really mundane. So it's awesome for when the garage door goes up and these people are really excited to take this. It's not waste. So take the blocks off our hands.
This treasure.
Yeah.
But you've been doing this for quite a while. We said 2017, but obviously you've had your eyes on mushrooms and fungi in general for a while. But like, how have you seen it change, and how has your perspective on mushrooms and the whole industry changed? You know, there's definitely been certain like booms, and I think we're in a boom right now. But like, obviously, there's a lot of hype and a lot of like super cool things around it. But like, you being, behind the scenes, in the food industry, also partnering up with these types of organizations, like how has that perspective changed? And maybe it hasn't.
No, I think there's like there's booms and the busts. There's definitely booms when it comes to like medicinal drinks and gummies and all that type of stuff. And I don't really pay attention to that much. That's just not where we are. But I also, underneath the booms, I also see just a steady, nice increase, which is really great. And my perspective is always not changed, but like I keep getting brought back to earth, because like right now in this little virtual room, we are in like a very thick mycelial bubble, and we all know about mushrooms. We love mushrooms, but I mean, you step outside of this bubble, even in Austin, and there's still a ton of people who have no idea. And then you step out of Austin and you go just into America, and it just has I don't even think it's really started. And that's super exciting because we're just, sometimes you get bogged down and you're like, oh, it's like, I've had oysters and lion's mane and chestnuts, but then like, there's just more stuff coming. And the more I interact with people that are in other states and in other places, they have no idea about any of this stuff. They don't know about there's other mushrooms to eat, much less how growing them and learning about them can kind of transform their yard or their garden or their food experience. And so I think it's I think folks need to become more in touch with where their food comes from and start producing their own food. And I think that mushrooms were like a missing piece of the puzzle. And that can like really, I think it's just steadily growing, and it's really exciting.
And last question, at least from my end, we have Sydney here, and I'm sure other folks here that are more tapped into the research side of mycology. But like, what are some of the things that you wish, scientists could work on, and how can we merge? Because obviously y'all have to do a lot of, stuff in the lab and preserve genetics and make sure that things are running smoothly. And senescence is key, or keeping senescence away from everything that's happening. Like, what are some of the things that you would love to see mycologists and especially community projects like this, work on, and could create this symbiosis with mushroom farms, to kind of do research that could benefit the farms. Again, the farms could do certain things that help the community projects. Like, what are some of the things that you may think of right now that we could be working on?
That's a good question. I loved seeing that. Just it helps to have it kind of like verified that it's doing something good. There was kind of like, because it's like a wood heavy substrate, for example, like a lot of people didn't know if it might take a really long time, for example, to compost and go into the soil. I like how it affects. I'm super interested in this kind of like project that I think it was Art was talking about. No, Art asked me a question. But that landscape sounds tough. And
with Kevin.
Yeah. So that sounds like how it actually affects those types of places, I think is really interesting. I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything else off the top of my head, but I want to know more because I have all these hunches and assumptions, but I am not a scientist, and so how to actually like dial it in. The plastic situation, that's a really, really good one. I would love to be able to. I get a lot of people when I communicate online, and they're just like, dude, just switch over to like this solution. I'm like, we'd be out of business in a moment. And like
Buckets. Let's do buckets.
yeah, like you really can't. And just like coming up with different ways of, if someone comes up with a miniature version of something that works, like we can run with it.
Hey, it sounds like from your end, there's a lot of opportunity to see what comes, and from, the research side and community projects, like, yeah, take on these challenges. And so I think even just having this discussion, a few minutes, to talk about this, I think is giving me a lot of ideas, little challenges. And this could be something that the Spore Corps can eventually incorporate later on. Is like, how do we tackle, farm, mushroom farm plastics, and maybe partner up with Unicorn Bags to see if they can sponsor something. Like, let's get into.
Yeah, if you want to be specific, I want to know if their oxy additive is just making microplastics in the soil, because I would buy them in a heartbeat, but like I don't want to do that.
Isn't there a part of you that doesn't want to know?
No part of me doesn't want to know.
The part that's already breathing lots of.
Because I'm going to be putting that in my garden, and I'm going to be eating that, and I'm not. I want to.
It's the Barbie part of you doesn't want to know.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a little Barbie in all of us.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, thank you.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
This was awesome. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity. Dr. Balan was on earlier. He's going to be our guest speaker in November, but I got to tour their lab, and they were doing some fun growing experiments using algae, and it was increasing the rate of growth. And so that's something that will be fun to experiment in the future. Do some tests there. I know there's a lot of people looking at biochar. There's already some things published around in adding biochar.
I've got a question real quick. Sean.
Okay, I'll do one more. What's up?
Okay, I'm an arborist, and what I'm looking for is a quick way for remediation of compacted soil. So when I fertilize trees, I go out about 2/3 of the drip line, make a 4-inch hole every 18 inches around the tree. I put my compost tea in there. I've got a fungal inoculant, and I'm just thinking, to use these spent blocks, kind of grind them up and put them in the hole should really boost the mycelium of getting out into the soil.
I think that just like top dressing, put it in the holes, that sounds great, but like top dress like a ring around the tree, and the worms will just do all the work for you.
Well, I need to make the hole because I need to get my compost tea down to the roots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so regardless, put them in the hole, but they'll just work all of that substrate into the soil, and they'll do it for you. You should definitely try it.
Okay, thank you.
Get that layer.
Good seeing you again.
All right, y'all. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, and I think in Sydney's research too, like, once you get the soil to a different level of pH too, that also helps with the other layer of like kind of the shredders and the other inhabitants in the soil food web. But I know Pierce, you're on here too. We have a couple of soil scientists, Pierce, and I don't know if
well, most of the soil up in
Lewis is also on today too.
7.8.
They might have some things to say as well.
Oh, I think just simply top dressing. And like if you're trying to add more like organic matter for like a huge piece of land, just starting in like a small corner and like slowly building it out. Because I think just adding a bunch of blocks on top of the soil here, it's just going to get really dry and take a really long time to decompose. But I think just introducing all that organic matter will do nothing but help build soils in this area.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would also say I tried on my farm an initial tillage, incorporating blocks. And you just got to be really strategic if digging it into the soil. I think there was a lot of advantage to it when I added the actual like organic matter of spent mushroom substrate into it. It seemed like I had better aggregate stability. Like the soil looked like it was like it's supposed to with more organic matter. And I didn't have any plants like have a lack of nutrition. Like they all kind of grew quickly. Um, but I did try to stagger like how much I put in certain areas, and I would use that area later in the season and maybe grow like cover crops and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it just sort of takes a little bit more time. We always tell gardeners, especially, like, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to add too much. You want to kind of sprinkle it in um, along with your other more higher nitrogen type composts.
yeah, I'd be interested to see if anyone would grow a legume after really mixing in a bunch of spent mushroom substrate, like almost right away, to
Mhm.
see that
See if
nitrogen
the
fixing
legume.
thing. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. I'd be interested to see. I know that there was one study that I think was happening in the Valley at UT, the campus there, where they were growing okra in just 100% spent mushroom substrate.
Is that with one up?
One up,
mushrooms?
yeah. Yeah, with their substrate.
Nice.
Yeah. But I would like to, at some point, we haven't started a kind of scholarship program, but I would love to get something going. And we're always looking for help. And that's one of the other things that, we're primarily volunteer run. We pay our educators. We have some funding now for curriculum development because we won a grant for the block program. So the block program does have some funding to do some pretty exciting things. And so we're always looking for help kind of in the area of fundraising. And also, I would love to have someone join our society that wants to help us develop a scholarship program and be like the administrator of that. Yeah, because I know there's several mycological societies that give scholarships for students that want to study these things. But yeah, and I don't think it necessarily even has to be in the university setting. Like, we just want to see a good design, basically, and someone that can have the right partnerships to make it happen.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think let's see. I pulled one more name, but I don't know if Vivi's still here. Let's do one last cordyceps culture giveaway. Let's see. Hold on one second, everybody. We've got Bonnie. Bonnie, I need your mailing address. So yeah, it's great to see everyone. Are there any other questions?
Now, who do I contact if I can deliver blocks?
So you can visit our website, and there's a link on the front page where you can sign up to volunteer.
Okay.
And sign up for a shift. Yeah. We appreciate it. Denny, are you here in Austin?
Round Rock.
Round Rock. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Round Rock has been rocking lately. Like there's just
I've been to the Round Rock Garden Center.
yes.
Got some blocks there, and I'm giving a presentation to the Round Rock Garden Club in a couple weeks. So
Oh,
I
good.
will push them to maybe start using some blocks.
Yeah.
And if there's any, I guess, any hints on home gardeners using these blocks,
Oh, yeah.
I'd sure appreciate it.
We have a whole program on it. So if they want us to come speak on that, we're happy to do that. I've probably spoken to about 100 different garden clubs at this point.
Did you speak up at the Native Plant Society up in Georgetown recently?
Yes.
Okay, that I was the one that you gave the block to.
Okay, yeah. I remember you.
And I ate some of the mushrooms, so.
Oh, good.
You've been myceliated, Danny, for a long time.
I have.
Inoculated.
I've known you for a long time.
I did have a question about the invasive nature of the golden oyster mushroom. Is that something we're concerned about at all with the blue oyster, I guess, that we get here mostly?
Yeah, I know that Hi-Fi and I think that Fallen Oak, they do grow a few of those because they have certain contracts with the groceries. But yeah, that was interesting news. And for me, I like look at the kind of the ecological role of the fungi in the system. Just thinking about what their role is like in degradation, and it's one study, and of course it showed that there were other polypores that no longer grew on these logs, but we've investigated in a couple of situations here in Central Texas where we thought like maybe they were growing in the wild, and every time it's like maybe something someone threw in their garden. And so I haven't personally seen any, even though there's a few things tagged that maybe are yellow oysters on iNaturalist, like I have never seen them grow beyond like on the substrate that they're grown on in the farms they're initially inoculated with. But I think that we have to consider kind of what fungi's role is. Because when people hear invasive, there's a lot of like fear, and they're for good reason, because there are some invasive plants that can change a whole ecosystem and knock out, all types of insects and microbes, even all the way down to the microbes. But Danielle, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it as well. Like we've talked about this pretty extensively since that study came out.
I'd love to hear Elizabeth. What's your concern? What's the main concern about
that? There has been a lot of reporting recently, and actually I guess it goes back a couple of years, that the golden oyster mushroom in particular has invaded at least the north and the Midwest and has displaced a lot of the native fungi. So wondering if that's a concern we have in handing out the blocks.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I would speak up. Hi, Elizabeth. I'm Kevin. I've had a fair amount of those blocks on my property, which is a pretty classic native property in our area, and there's been zero sign of the goldens ever reoccurring. If they're still in their original block, they're okay, but they get wilted and then they die. But I've never ever seen them accommodate another place. But I also appreciated Angel's point about sometimes, because what I've observed is the different mushroom sequences, they, when you have a certain mushroom for fresh wood, okay, great. But then you have all the carry-ons, and I found that to be
primary and secondary decomposers.
I mean,
like
all these different, I've told you, Angel, all these different mushrooms I never even saw on my property are showing up. And you're like, it's amazing what happens when you give them food. But so, yeah.
Yeah. And even though like I listened to the person, there's a recording with the University of Wisconsin. I did a talk with them recently, but prior to me doing the talk, they had the talk with the researcher that did the study there. And she, shared that initially the mushrooms were grown on a farm and somehow like made their way out of the farm. But yeah, like I think it's super important to just kind of understand, like, first, like, not be hysterical about like the word invasive, because we see a lot of that. There's like definitely like room to understand it more, but like the evolution of decomposition and its role in the environment is super important to understand as well. And so if we have more aggressive decomposers coming in, like it's continuing this like ecological role that's super necessary. And, in Texas, like it's very difficult for mushrooms to fruit here. Like we have a few seasons where things can happen, but it's such a harsh climate and our hardwoods are very hard. They're very, very tough. Some of our oaks, they're very, very tough trees. I mean, although like our red oaks, like they do struggle with fungi that are already there. For example, like the oak wilt, those things are already there. Like it's just the plant is starting to get stressed from other environmental conditions.
I wanted to just add on a little bit to that. The yellow oysters don't really thrive in open soil or like controlled, just like Angel was saying, or an uncontrolled like outdoor environment, kind of the way like plants or true invasive fungi do. They need like a very rich, nutrients rich, pasteurized, sterilized kind of like food source. I really like something that someone told me one time, and I was like, oh, that's a great analogy. They're like, it's like giving someone an oyster block is more like giving them like a sourdough starter than as opposed to planting an invasive weed. It thrives under care, but without that care and that very specific food source, it doesn't really take over the environment. But that's just something someone told me that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. Danielle, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think Kevin, Angel, and everybody else is kind of.
I was going to pass on
I was
also
gonna say.
that we have ash juniper, a lot of it in our area, and it does not decompose normally, but making the environment more suitable for mushrooms has caused my ash juniper logs to attract a variety of mushrooms. Angel, I didn't even tell you, but I saw recently, I don't know its name, but it's a little yellow fungus. It's kind of quite cute.
Oh, the wax caps. I love those.
I don't know. They don't create buttons or anything. They're
know.
just like, they're almost like jelly. Anyway,
Okay.
I saw it growing on ash juniper. I've never seen that before. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the kind of cool thing about the whole idea. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen, and invasives are terrible. I take out them all the time. So Elizabeth, really good point. On the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, decomposition is critical in this area. And it's
Absolutely.
really fun to see decomposition of ash juniper. I'll be the first to tell you.
Yes, we
All
get
the
so
kids.
excited every time we see mushrooms growing on ash juniper as well. Eric, you could probably say a lot about, because you're adding so much fungal food to the preserve, the Circle Acres preserve, and you've been doing a lot of these restoration techniques now, since, I don't know, probably the early aughts, 90s even. I think you're
sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Specifically about the yellow oysters, it was maybe a couple years ago. Some of those blocks ended up at Circle Acres with a load. wood chips, and we had broken them up, and they're definitely fruiting all over the place in the initial few weeks, and I was starting to get concerned because they were definitely more aggressive. But after that initial fruiting, I've never seen them again.
Mhm.
So that was a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we're monitoring. I look, unlike a lot of people, when I get up in the morning, instead of looking at the news, I look on iNaturalist at what mushrooms have been growing.
I love
And
that.
and if I see a yellow oyster, you can bet that I will be going and looking at where it's growing. But I do have a really funny story about this happened maybe like 3 years ago. But someone maybe had used a block with the yellow oyster, and they were right by the mushroom farm, Smallhold, when they were still in South Austin. And we were all sharing the iNaturalist observation, like somebody's got to go out and find this and see what it is. So I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going out there. So I went out. It was like behind this park, this city park, close to the mushroom farm. And I was kind of looking like I didn't belong because I was looking for mushrooms or like, I don't know. I didn't have a dog or I wasn't exercising. Pretty much I look out of place immediately in a park. And this fella came out from the like townhouses right by the spot. And he's like, what are you doing here? Like, what are you looking for? And I was like, oh, I'm with the Mycological Society, and there's this invasive mushroom that I think may be growing here. Like, is anybody cultivating mushrooms or have a mushroom garden? And I showed him the photos on iNaturalist, and he was like, no. And then he wanted to talk about psychedelics, of course. So I was like, all right, let's talk about this. We talked about psychedelics for a little bit. And then he pointed over, he's like, what's that over there? That's some straw. Like, if somebody might be mushroom gardening over there. And I was like, oh, you just outed yourself. Like, you know what mushrooms like to eat. And so I was like, no, I don't see it over there. And so I didn't see anything. And we just finally said goodbye. He told me about all these cool native plants he was growing because there was a bunch of cages behind this house in this, easement area that wasn't his, that he was just having fun growing like natives. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure it was this guy. And I asked too many leading questions, like saying there's an invasive fungi, and it kind of scared him. I was like, maybe I look like a mushroom cop or something. I don't know. Like, I didn't seem threatening. I didn't feel like I was asking threatening questions, but he was definitely intimidated by me because then I went back to the iNaturalist observation and it was deleted.
That's funny. Very funny.
I was like, wow, I really feel like a mushroom cop now.
That's what they thought. This is so funny.
That's the next CTMS program, the fungi police. CTMS fungi police.
I'll sign up. That's fun.
I was like, wow, like I'm pretty sure he was just like having fun, maybe picked up some blocks from one of the farms. And then when he heard me say invasive, like he really knows, because he was he's planting all these natives, and like he knows like that's not something you touch,
Next time you say you're from the Mycological Bureau or like
the Bureau. Well, now we have a spore core badge. So I don't know. Looks pretty threatening, right?
Got to take it seriously.
We're gonna get patches made, everyone. So we can put them on our overalls or jumpsuits or whatever intimidating outfits we want to wear.
Make it official. Official.
Make a badge that says make a patch that says answer to the badge.
We could have a purple line, like our little our flag will have a purple line. Don't
The
cross
thin
the
purple
purple
line.
line.
Wait, hold on. This is great.
Don't cross the purple line with the yellow oysters.
We start having like
You know they're
hard
complementary
conversations
colors
with
and all,
purple
but anywho, well, this has been fun. Daniel, thank you so much for putting this together. And thanks
was awesome
everybody
too.
for joining us and staying a little bit longer this time, asking your good questions.
Yes, thank y'all so much for letting me be here.
Yeah, we love having you here. And anytime you want to come to hang out in Texas, we do a lot of online events, but yeah, just send me a message.
It's like I need to get something started here in Central Arkansas, because in like Northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, there's a little bit going on, but here it's like non-existent. Like no one at Euler, like my university, is interested at all in the research I'm doing. I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, do y'all not see like what all this can do? But there are people like y'all that do see that, so that's good.
Even with all the agricultural tie-ins and everything, there's still people not even curious.
Oh, I know it, and I think that it could solve so many problems as far as issues that we have in agriculture that all really start in the soil. So,
yeah.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, Daniel.
Of course, Art.
Thanks, Angel.
Bye.
Oh yeah, you too and stuff, Angel.